Howdy there, folks. My name is Rabbit, and welcome to episode 152 of our post-game exploration of Jade Cocoon 2's bonus content. In our last video, we continued to make our way through some of the earlier levels of the Water Forest. We're almost at the end of Water Shade, and hopefully, by the end of this episode, we'll be ready at least to tackle the first island of Water Tour, which is the level 5 Water Forest. So let us go ahead and dive right in. That's really the extent of what took place. Most of our last episode was just a couple of fights. We did fight Nam, who had taken a job from a bulletin posting. Very odd to see him here in the Water Forest, but whatever. He hunted us down and still lost, so how embarrassing for him. But after tackling him in battle, we did also face off against the new and improved human version of Cure, who still doesn't really remember us, but it seems as though we've wasted no time in re-befriending her. So all seems to be well on that front. We did take her out as well. She had quite the impressive team of Drac. So hopefully that will allow us to unlock the water Drac. I think that's the only one that we're missing is a blue one. So with all that being said, let's go ahead, as the prompt itself implies, and head into Watershade number 4. I was sharing with you guys for our last two episodes a bit of 2018's newest, freshest drama in my life, but mainly it was a false accusation that was made against us, and then a lazy property manager not wanting to do her job and doing whatever was just going to be easiest for her, and that, of course, pissed me off. I challenged her, pointed out why everything that she did was wrong and it was unprofessional, and how I expect more from her in my interactions with her. And yeah, I got kind of an apology, half-assed, half-hearted one, but I guess an apology is an apology, and you gotta take what you can get sometimes. So ultimately, I think a point I forgot to even mention was, or maybe I did share this with you guys in our last episode, one of the things that she did finally disclose to us was that she herself knew, and by she I mean Sheila, the property manager, knew that it was all bullshit, because she didn't even file anything against us, because she knew it was a false claim, because we're among her quietest tenants. The people next door and across the hall from us had never heard anything from us. And as it turns out, the girl upstairs, who's totally psychotic and is actually, and in fact, the loud, obnoxious person here, she's made lots of false complaints about random people all the time, people who have proven that they weren't even in their apartment at the time of her complaint. So she knew that this was bogus, and it was probably her, I guess, hearing a door slamming, or she'd heard something slam. And it's how would you even identify that it was downstairs if you just heard a random slam, you fucking basic bitch? Get a life, learn to control your anger, and don't just blame a random neighbor because you're unhappy about your choices or whatever's going on in your fucking miserable life. Fuck off and stop wasting my goddamn time. And I feel isn't that the property manager's job to start fielding those things, or to be upfront with people and be hey, we've noticed that you have a history of filing false complaints, and this time you're filing one against people who've lived here for a year and a half, and there's literally been nothing ever said about them. They're very kind, they're very laid back. If you genuinely are concerned about something, you need to provide specifics, what was the date, what was the sound. But she didn't do that because this person upstairs is nuts. So in order to just keep things as easy as possible for her, she was just fine, whatever, we'll fill it out here, I'll deal with it, and I'll call them. And she did, thinking that because she touched base with Andrew instead of me, and Andrew is definitely more of the roll over and take it kind of type than I am, which sometimes it's good that he's that way, because I feel he really just wants things to be peaceful, even if he's wrongfully accused of something. But sometimes I think it's a huge weakness, because it's fucking stand up for yourself and have some goddamn balls. You have to advocate for yourself. No one else is going to, and I'm not always going to advocate for you. So I'm going to stand up for myself, though, and you need to learn how to do that as well. Because I think especially when we have kids, so if someone is just wrongfully doing something to our children, you're just going to be whatever, not a big deal, because you don't want to deal with it. Fuck that. Fuck that. I'm not the kind of person who just picks unnecessary fights, but I tell you right now, especially if I know for a fact that I'm in the right, and it's somewhat of a big deal because there's a history of wrongdoing that's going on, you guys had better fucking believe I will stand up for what is right, and I will fight for justice. And, maybe part of that is just my nature, and part of it's also just the work that I do, and it sometimes spills over into my personal life, because I think, especially when it comes to education and health and all these other things, like justice is so important because there are so many things that are being wrongfully taken away from people, or opportunities aren't rightfully presented to everyone. And so, yeah, is this as grave of an issue as individuals having access to affordable health? No, it's not even close. But I think just because I'm so used to working in advocacy and working in both adult and youth education, I just value justice a lot, and I value truthfulness, and I that's just who I am, and I'm always going to be that way. And if people don't want to fight with me, don't fuck with me. Like, I'm very nice, and I'm very kind, and I'm very open to people's thoughts. Like, I think most people who know me would say that I'm logical almost to a fault, where for the most part I keep my emotions out of things, or even if my emotions are involved, I still logically will point out why certain actions should be taken. Like, for example, emotionally, I personally would never have an abortion because I love kids and I want to have a family someday. However, like, logically and you just practically speaking, the world is overpopulated, and I think a lot of people don't realize statistically what a negative financial impact unwanted pregnancies have on countries, and just even globally what a negative impact unwanted or pregnancies that cannot be suitably fulfilled, let's just say. So, and I say that kind of loosely to encompass people that have children irresponsibly, so they can't really take care of the kids after like the age of 3 or 4. Like, they don't know how to emotionally provide for these kids. They just know how to keep them from dying. Or people that purposefully use their kids to get certain funding, or people that are like rape victims but keep the kid, but then like they have weird feelings about it. Just, there are so many circumstances that, again, personally, I would probably never have an abortion. Like, if someone raped me and I was pregnant, I'd still probably keep it. I'd definitely want the guy murdered, but I would keep the child. But I understand practically, logically, statistically, everything that comes into the choice for someone to pursue an abortion if they want to. So emotionally, if that girl came to me and was seeking some sort of like counsel, I would ask her, like, you know, would you be able to handle keeping this child? Because if you're just going to abuse it because it reminds you of who did this to you, don't keep it. If you're worried about how there are so many kids in orphanages and foster care already, and you don't want to contribute to that, so adoption is not something that you think is practical, you know, I think aborting it makes more sense than treating this child poorly or giving them a horrible, horrible life, and basically taking away their ability to have any sort of happiness, or at least initially. You know, people have definitely overcome horrendous things, but there are others who suffered their entire lives, and I think people don't like looking at that truth. They don't like accepting that there are genuinely people whose lives suck from start to finish. I've read a couple of accounts, both related to the work that I do, as well as just like things that I've seen published more casually for the layman, that details how sometimes people just have shitty lives and no point in their life was good. They were miserable till the day they either just randomly died or they committed suicide. This is a thing, whether you accept it or not. And again, I personally still feel like life has value. And I think for me, I would still want to give that my child, regardless of the circumstances revolving around its conception, I would want to give it a chance. But as a researcher, as a scientist, and as someone who has empathy, compassion, and who can think for herself and remove her emotions from choices and from just logical processes, I can see why that might not be the proper path for everyone. So I say all of that just to come back to the fact that I wish people were more so that way, and they could think before they act or do what's right and just pursue the truth regardless of whether you agree with that truth or not. Like, just because you don't agree with it, that doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong. It might be wrong for you in action anyway, but you can see how it is just the basic facts, or there are basic facts surrounding whatever it is that you're discussing or debating. So that's who I am. And I know, like, again, certain crusades are more justified than others. And sometimes you truly need to take a step back and ask yourself, like, is this a circumstance that deserves me being as forthcoming and as aggressive as I'm being? And maybe sometimes truly it's like, you know what, this is not a battle worth pursuing. But I think in this case especially, it was. And I didn't know all of the circumstances revolving around this. Like, I didn't know the girl upstairs made a lot of false reports. I didn't know that she was as crazy as she was. I knew there was something wrong because she's always loud and nuts. But, you know, it could just be that she drinks too much. Like, that's not necessarily, like, a problem. It could just be she's having fun. She's a student here or doing something here from Spain. Like, I don't know, this person, like, I would never assume, though, that she was just an angry bitch. But now I know she is genuinely an angry bitch. And whenever she's mad about whatever, she'll just falsely accuse random people. So I feel like as the property manager, it's your job to field that. And it's your job to at some point say, like, look, you're getting out of control. Like, you've made complaints about people in the past. You do it fairly regularly, and you only come in here when you're in a bad mood and when there are things wrong. Like, you never come in here to talk about anything else and then just casually bring up, like, hey, I noticed that apartment number whatever has been throwing loud parties. Like, can you look into that? You're always on some sort of fucking tangent about something going on at work, and then you also, like, sidestep into these other random things that you start exaggerating and acting nuts about for no fucking reason. So that's your fucking job as the property manager, in my opinion. So anyway, I guess to bring this all to a close, even though we do have closure in the sense that we got the apology we needed, and we also received confirmation that nothing was formally even filed against us because she knew it was a lie, I just still don't get, like, even though this time, like, you're saying you knew it was bullshit and you regret involving us, like, how often have you been doing this? And did it really need to take me standing up for everyone for you to realize that this is not an appropriate way of handling this? Like, you claim that you've been in this field for so long and, like, you know what's going on and you're the best at what you do and you can predict everything I'm going to say, which is why you keep cutting me off when I'm trying to make valid points. Yet you can't handle this basic part of your job. Like, I just, you know, it's kind of interesting, and it's a side thing that's somewhat irrelevant, but I remember when my dad was still alive, and, like, the last year of him working, he was actually about 6 months from retiring, which is what makes his unexpected death also so sad, was that he had worked so hard his entire life, and he was so close to that retirement, and literally died, like, within 6 months of getting a very good government retirement. Anyway, I remember in, like, the last year of his life, he had started telling me that something that frustrated him so much and why he was enjoying his work less and less was he noticed that both for younger people as well as people who were older and nearing their retirement, he saw that there was a pervasive laziness that was present where people were doing, like, the bare minimum to get through their jobs, or they were picking and choosing what parts they wanted to actually do, so it looked like they were doing it, like they were covering their tracks, but they weren't actually doing a good job. And whenever he would confront these people, they would make excuses. Sometimes they'd apologize. Sometimes they would acknowledge what they were doing, but they would never actually change because that change would require them to work harder. And it frustrated him a lot, and he was like, oh, these young kids don't want to work as hard as I had to work when I was younger. And then he would similarly complain about some of the older people who's like, they're just getting lazy because they're getting burned out, but it's like home stretch. You're making things harder for everyone else. Be a fucking team player, you scrub. And I would joke with him and I would say, Dad, you're getting so crotchety. Like, I'm sure it's not everyone, or it's not as many people as you're saying. Maybe there's one or two that are bad apples and you're letting it spoil the whole bunch. And he would always tell me, he was like, Rabbit, I'm telling ya, start looking for it. You're going to notice it too. You're going to see these patterns and these habits. And I was just like, whatever, Dad, whatever. You're just being cranky because he had a bad day. And I'd send him my love, validate him, his feelings, like, and just talk to him about other things. But, you know, I feel like he's right. Like, I see these trends and I see this sort of thing happening more than I used to see. And I think this is, like I kind of have explained in the last couple of episodes, this is an example of that, where someone had a basic job function and they refuse to do it to make it easier for themselves, and then they want to cover their tracks, but at the same time make it look like they did what they were supposed to do while still acknowledging they didn't do everything they were supposed to do. It's a really weird situation where it's like you're kind of mad, but you kind of understand, yet at the same time you're like, but I couldn't get away with this in my job. I couldn't just half-ass something of this magnitude, or that would possibly come back to me like this. And if it did, I would be forced to confront it and deal with it and own up to every part of where I fucked up, not just one piece of it, not just like the lightest piece of it. I'd have to own up to all of it and try to fix it to the best of my ability. And I just feel like people don't want to take ownership of their choices, and when consequences unfold, they then want to assume the role of the victim because of the consequences of choices they made. And it's like, you're not a victim here. This is a natural thing that should have happened as a result of what you did. Like, you're not a victim in this story. You caused this. You created this circumstance. You supported the poor choices of someone else, and then you got other people involved wrongfully, and when they're upset and they call you out and they rightfully challenge your part in this entire fiasco, you want to be upset and butthurt about it and act like you're somewhat innocent just because you didn't necessarily start it? Like, that's not how this works. Oh my God, you guys. All in all, I say all this just to say this is why I can't deal with people. I'm an introvert to a T, and it's not because I want to be a hermit or because I'm antisocial. I'm sure many of you have heard all of my stories about how I do have very meaningful relationships and friendships with people. I'm definitely a quality over quantity individual. And I think that's the way it needs to be, because like there are just so many selfish assholes out there, and I just don't understand why some people make the choices that they make. And you know, I try not to judge people because I know I came from a very frustrating upbringing, and my background is very non-traditional. The things that we overcame, the things that my immigrant family like went through, and the hardships that came about as a result of both positive and negative choices certain people made. But in spite of all of that, I've never once wanted to assume the role of a victim to the point where I would take my problems or pain out on anyone else. Like, yeah, sometimes it's inevitable. You're going to have a bad day. You're going to have horrible memories, or something outside of your control is going to befall you, and it's going to feel unfair, and it's going to be frustrating, and you're going to wish it didn't happen. And maybe in that moment, someone who's close to you, you'll say something hurtful or that isn't necessarily fair to bring up at that point in time, even if it is technically true, and even if you were justified in saying it, you said it in the wrong way or at the wrong time, whatever, or to the wrong person. But in those moments, like, you have to be willing to apologize and try to be better than who you were the day before and keep moving forward. And I think too many people are comfortable with settling and just doing what's easiest instead of doing what's right and doing what objectively is best. Even if it's not objectively best, but they think it's best, they still won't do it because they're lazy sacks of shit, and they'd rather go with the flow and not need to acknowledge their problems or confront their problems. And, you know, I guess everyone has the right to do what they need to do as long as they're not actively hurting someone else. But I really like to challenge everyone I meet, be a good person. And by good person, I don't mean you have to start your own charity or be the best at your job and then give all your money away, but be as good of a human being as possible. Love others as much as you fucking love yourself, or love others more than you love your fucking self. And treat other people with the dignity and respect that you expect to receive from others. Like, Jesus Christ, this should be basic fucking human 101. And yet I feel like oftentimes you meet adults, you meet kids, you meet people from all walks of life who just don't fucking get it. And they're nuts as fuck. I just... You know, I love people in one sense, but then I hate humans in the other sense, in that I just feel like we're so destructive, we're so selfish, we're so fucking crazy, and we just do so many terrible, terrible things, and then oftentimes we can't even own up to it. Like people who will just, for example, murder someone and will still try to defend themselves. And it's like, you drowned your 2 kids and ran over your wife with a car, and yet you want to sit here and your defense is that you were unhappy and you didn't know how to get out of the marriage. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you, you sociopath? I don't know, you guys. So long story short, this is why I'm an introvert. It's not necessarily because I hate people or just even because people drain me, but it's like I don't feel it's a good or valuable use of my time to surround myself with all the nutty fuckers that are out there. And on that note, I said I was going to make this a more positive, happy episode. So I guess in our final couple of minutes as we wrap up this forest, I can share with you that things are going okay at work. I'm trying to think of some exciting things that have been going on. Oh, well, one quick bit of bad news. My black and white fur baby, Ptolemy, one of our guinea pigs, he had a heart attack, which makes me so sad, but I had shared with you guys in our last recording session that I rescued a bunch of guinea pigs, and I don't know if at this time, I don't think I did, we separated Ptolemy from Peter and Pickle, were the other two. They're the brothers who got along well, but they were pretty unkind towards Ptolemy. So we separated Ptolemy, we built a second cage from scratch. Like, we don't fuck around with our pets. Like, we make sure they have the best of the best. So for guinea pigs, I've noticed that a lot of commercial cages are too small, or ones that are decent size are hella expensive. So Andrew and I built the cage. Like, we got like a coroplast base, and then we bought those grids, those cages. Basically, we made a CNC cage. You can look it up if you have guinea pigs and you don't know what the fuck that is. There are tutorials everywhere online. So we built 2 of these, which wasn't super cheap, mind you. I mean, it's less expensive than buying a commercial cage, but we took the time, the money, the effort, energy, blah, 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 and put this together so Ptolemy could have a safe space. And we noticed that he needed a friend, but because his upbringing had been so bad from the shitty owners he'd had previously, who I don't want to go on that rant again. I know you guys already know how I feel about all of that, but I just don't understand people who get pets that either A, aren't ready for them, or B, they don't really want to do the work that comes with the territory of owning these pets, and so they treat them badly, or they let them be abused. And Ptolemy had such a horrible, horrible life, and he ended up having a heart attack, and then just like a series of seizures, and he passed away, my baby. Oh, I was so upset about it, but you know, I get that it happens, and this comes with the territory of rescuing versus getting like a fresh, brand spanking new baby from a breeder. Like, you know, whenever you rescue or you adopt, like you get what you get, and these animals typically come from broken homes. Like, rarely when you're rescuing is it just that, oh, you know, we decided that, hey, this animal wasn't for us, but we loved it in spite of everything and just wanted to hold on to it until we found a suitable match. Like, no, usually it's like they had been neglecting the animal for ages and ages, and then it's come to the point where they realize, oh, this thing might die if we don't do something about it. Guess we might as well surrender it. And it comes like with super long toenails, overgrown teeth, missing fur because its diet's been terrible, and it's lived a stressful life where your fucking toddler was throwing it around and like biting it and all this other crazy shit. And it's like, you get these broken, sad creatures and you try to give them a better life, but sometimes it's too late. Sometimes it's not, though. Peter and Pickle are doing great, and we had rescued another one named Hammer, and he was the one that was intended to be Ptolemy's cage mate, but Ptolemy didn't make it. So we still have 3 guinea pigs, but Ptolemy's no longer with us. Instead, we have Hammer, who is an utter delight. He's probably the nicest guinea pig I've ever met. He just loves attention. I think I did talk to you guys about him, that his situation was different from the other 3. The first 3 we rescued, they were abused, but Hammer was just neglected. So Hammer didn't have like anything broken or bruised or anything like that where like a child was too rough with it, or they were spanking it or something like that. His issue was just that he was neglected. So his toenails were too long and they weren't feeding him a proper diet. So he actually is diabetic. Well, he's pre-diabetic. We did have it confirmed that his blood sugar is too high, but it's not to the point where he needs insulin, so that's good. But he's pre-diabetic because they were feeding him improperly. His nails were overgrown. Just due to poor pet husbandry in general, he was just unwell. Like, his fur was discolored and it wasn't healthy, and he just was sick. But he's fine. Like, his personality's great. He wasn't taught to fear humans because he never really interacted with them at all. Like, the people got him, and then they didn't actually want him because guinea pigs take more work, I think, than people think they do. I mean, they're not hard pets to have, but you have to clean their cage every day, like a light cleaning, and then once a week, you need to do like a deep cleaning. I'd say I spend like 20 minutes a day, 6 days a week doing the spot cleaning, and then like 45 minutes to an hour once a week, or maybe once every like 8 or 9 days, just depending, doing like a thorough deep cleaning where I'm spraying things down, I'm rearranging the cage, I'm making sure like the the fleece that I'm lining it with is like perfect, and there's no, like, I just make sure everything's fine. And yeah, in the grand scheme of things, like, that's not a huge commitment. Like, we spend more time probably fucking texting and browsing your stupid celebrity stories. Not me, but, you know, other people. I'm just saying, people find ways to piss away their time on pettier, stupider shit, but they will argue that, oh, I just didn't have the time, and there's just too much, like, this pet just blah, 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 blah. And it's like, fuck off. Like, fuck off. Don't get these animals if you're just not prepared to take care of them, you fucking scrubs. So, long story short, oh, you guys, I'm just, like, on all the rants today. Ptolemy passed, but we do have Hammer, who is an utter delight. I miss Ptolemy every day. He's still the background on my phone. But it's hard. Like, he was such a sweet baby, and his life was just so bad, and he was just abused so horrendously. And I had hoped that he would make it at least, like, 3 or 4 years. But he just, I guess he had high blood pressure for a guinea pig, and he just had lived his entire existence under such extreme stress that it was truly insurmountable for him. He just couldn't overcome it and couldn't recover from the foundation that had been laid for him by his shitty previous owners. And it makes me sad, and I still grieve for him, because it's like, yeah, to some people it might just be a stupid guinea pig, like they're not the smartest mammals, and maybe they don't contribute that much, you know, they were bred to be food, and they're like basically chickens. Like, they're a little dumb, but they're cute, you know, with their little beady eyes, and they just bring you so much joy if you take the time to love them properly. And even if you think they're dumb, and even if you breed them for food, like, I don't care if you eat them, but it's like, God damn it, give them some dignity and some respect in life. Like, and if that means you surrendering it early because you realize you made a mistake in buying it, fine. That is so much more commendable and respectable than keeping them for years. Like, Hammer's 2 years old, like he had been mistreated and neglected. I shouldn't say mistreated, because mistreated, I think, implies, like, physical abuse, but he was neglected, and I think that's still a type of mistreatment and abuse, but whatever, I'll give his owners some credit. They didn't physically abuse him, they just neglected him horribly. So he's a delight, though. I love my guinea pigs, you guys, and our birds are all doing great, and I told you one of them that we had gotten was also semi-rescued. He was from a store, but the store had him for a long time because no one wanted him, and they were afraid, like, oh, we don't know how long we can keep him here, and, like, if he doesn't sell, like, he's probably just going to be frozen and used as snake food. And, you know, you can't save them all. Like, that's inevitable that some rats and some little birds, like, you know, if nobody wants them or they're sickly, like, yeah, they're going to end up being snake food. And it sucks, but circle of life and all that. Like, you can't change the world, but you can still make a difference in your own community and just in that little circle of goings-on in your own life. So anyway, friends, we will go ahead. Oh, this guy wants me so bad. Like, look at him, like right on Kahu's balls, figuratively and almost literally. But anyway, we will go ahead and call this an episode. When we come back in our next video, I promise, good vibes, happy stories, things that I'm hoping will unfold in 2018. I similarly want to hear kind of what your plans are for the year, any goals that you have, or just in general, anything that's going on that you want to talk about. I love hearing about it in the comments. I love reading your emails, love getting those private messages either on YouTube or on Facebook. So definitely feel free to respond to things that I say or questions that I ask, because I do genuinely read them, and I pride myself on responding to almost every single comment or email, whatever that I get. So regardless of the correspondence, I eagerly await it. And with that being said, we will go ahead and just part ways here. So thanks for watching, friends. My name is Rabbit. This is my post-game exploration of Jade Cocoon 2's bonus content. And I look forward to seeing you guys in episode 153, where fingers fucking crossed we'll at last be ready to tackle the level 5 I almost said fire forest, but it's the water forest. You know, water, fire, almost the same element, right? Close enough. Anyway, I'll see you guys there.